It is an ancient mariner, and he stoppeth one of three. At a lively wedding, a young guest is halted by a weathered old sailor with a hypnotic, sorrowful gaze. The mariner's presence is haunting. His skin sun-browned, his hands gnarled, but it's his eye that holds the guest captive. Despite the music and laughter inside, the guest cannot break free. He is compelled to listen. The mariner's tale is not just an adventure, but a confession, a burden he must share. The ship's departure was joyful, the crew confident as they sailed into the unknown, unaware of the trials that lay ahead. The wedding guest, impatient, hears the distant celebration, but the mariner's story draws him in, like a moth to a flame. The contrast is stark. The warmth of the wedding versus the cold shadow of the mariner's past, a past filled with sorrow and regret. The mariner's need to tell his story is a curse, and the guest is chosen to hear it, bound by an invisible thread of fate. As the wedding fades into the background, only the mariner and the guest remain, one haunted, one about to be changed forever. The tale is about to reveal the cost of a single terrible act, an act that would alter the mariner's life irrevocably. The mariner's story is a lesson about nature, sin, and the ties that bind all living things, a cautionary tale for all who hear it. And so the ancient mariner begins, his voice carrying the weight of his sorrow and the wisdom of his years. The mariner's ship sailed south, spirits high, as the crew revelled in the promise of adventure and the thrill of the open sea. Laughter echoed across the deck, and the horizon seemed endless, filled with hope and possibility. But their joy was short-lived, for a violent storm soon erupted, tossing the ship mercilessly and driving them into a frozen Antarctic wasteland far from any familiar shore. Surrounded by monstrous green ice, the crew was trapped in a world of silence and dread. The cold bit into their bones, and the endless ice seemed to close in, isolating them from all hope. Then, out of the mist, an albatross appeared. A living soul in the lifeless expanse, its wings bright against the gloom, a symbol of life and mystery. The sailors welcomed it as a sign of hope. The bird's presence seemed to guide them to safety. Its arrival lifted their spirits, and they believed it was a good omen sent by the heavens. The albatross became their companion, following the ship, eating from their hands and bringing comfort to the weary crew. Its presence brought a favourable wind, and the ship sailed swiftly once more, as if blessed by the bird's watchful eye. But in a moment of senseless cruelty, the mariner shot the albatross with his crossbow, shattering the fragile bond between man and nature. No reason, no hunger, no fear, just a thoughtless act, leaving the crew in stunned silence as the bird fell lifeless from the sky. The crew was shocked, but when the weather cleared, they justified the killing, convincing themselves it was for the best, making themselves complicit in the mariner's crime. The wedding guest is horrified, and we sense the gravity of the mariner's crime. The tale grows darker, and the weight of guilt settles in. The killing of the albatross was not just the death of a bird. It was a violation of nature's grace, a betrayal of the mercy that had been shown to them. The universe had offered them mercy, and the mariner had thrown it away, casting himself and his shipmates into the unknown. This single act would unleash swift and terrible consequences, as if the very elements turned against them in retribution. The mariner's fate and that of his crew was sealed. A sense of doom settled over the ship, and the air grew heavy with foreboding. The story pivots on this moment of violence, a turning point from which there could be no return. The mariner's burden had only just begun. The curse was coming, and the true cost of his actions was yet to be revealed. At first, the mariner's crime seemed to go unpunished. The crew, having sided with him, sailed north into open ocean until the wind died. The ship was becalmed, motionless under a blazing, merciless sun. Day after day, they drifted, as idle as a painted ship upon a painted ocean. Thirst tormented them, water everywhere, but not a drop to drink. The sea turned foul, crawling with strange, slimy creatures. At night the water glowed with ghostly fire, a vision of decay. The crew was trapped in a nightmare, punished by the very world they had wronged. The silence and stillness became a curse. The ship was no longer a vessel of hope, but a floating prison. The mariner and his crew were haunted by their crime. Nature, once their ally, had turned against them. Their suffering was only beginning. The lesson: disrespect nature, and nature will answer. The crew's support for the mariner turned to blame as thirst and despair set in. Their accusing eyes marked him as the cause of their suffering. In a desperate act, they hung the dead albatross around his neck, a symbol of his guilt. The mariner was forced to wear his crime, isolated and shamed. The bird became a physical and spiritual burden, a constant reminder of his sin. He could not escape the weight of what he had done. The crew, dying one by one, left him utterly alone. The albatross was now his cross to bear. The mariner's punishment was just beginning. Alone among the dead, the mariner faced a fate worse than death. The silence of the night pressed in on him, broken only by the creaking of the ship and the distant cries of unseen creatures. A ghostly ship appeared, its sails tattered and glowing in the moonlight, crewed by death and life in death, gambling for souls beneath the pale sky. Death claimed the crew, life in death claimed the mariner, condemning him to endless torment, a punishment that seemed to stretch beyond time itself. For 7 nights he was surrounded by corpses, unable to pray, haunted by their open eyes that seemed to accuse him in the moon's cold glow. The albatross still hung from his neck, the weight of his guilt crushing him, a constant reminder of his fateful mistake. On the 7th night under the moon, he saw the water snakes, once repulsive, now beautiful in the silvery light, their colours shimmering like living jewels. A sudden love for these creatures welled up in his heart, filling him with wonder and a sense of connection he had never known before. Unaware, he blessed them, and in that moment the spell broke, as if the universe itself had heard his silent prayer. The albatross fell from his neck and sank into the sea, swallowed by the dark waters below. The burden of guilt was lifted. He could finally pray, his heart lighter than it had been in many days. Redemption came not through grand gestures, but through a simple act of love and respect for life, a lesson learned in the quiet of the night. The mariner had learned all of creation is sacred, and every living thing deserves reverence. By blessing the sea snakes, he reconnected with nature and with the divine, finding peace in the unity of all life. His suffering had taught him humility and reverence, and a deep respect for the mysteries of the world. The curse was broken, but the lesson would remain, echoing through the rest of his days. The mariner's story was now a warning to others, a tale to be told and remembered. Respect all living things or suffer the consequences, for in every creature there is a spark of the sacred. The albatross was a symbol of hope and good luck for sailors, a guardian of the sea. Harming one was seen as a grave offence, inviting disaster. Coleridge's poem didn't invent this superstition, but it made it unforgettable. The mariner's punishment, wearing the dead bird, became a lasting metaphor for guilt. The albatross around one's neck entered our language as a symbol of burdensome regret. The poem's power spread the superstition far beyond the sea. The albatross became a universal warning: respect nature or pay the price. The mariner's tale turned folklore into a moral lesson for all. Sailors' lives were ruled by superstition, ways to make sense of a dangerous world. Starting a voyage on a Friday was bad luck. Whistling could summon storms. Bananas and flowers were forbidden on board, each with its own ominous reason. Cats were welcomed for luck and weather prediction. Tattoos served as talismans against drowning. These beliefs created a shared culture and comforted sailors facing the unknown. Rituals and taboos bonded crews and offered a sense of control. The story of the albatross was the ultimate warning: respect the sea's mysteries. Superstitions were survival tools, rules for living with the unpredictable ocean. Myths and superstitions help us understand and survive the unknown. For sailors, stories like the mariner's were more than entertainment. They were guides for living with the sea's dangers. The ancient mariner's tale is a ghost story, but also a moral lesson. Respect nature, value life, and know your actions have consequences. Myths teach, unite, and endure because they feel timeless, truths whispered by wind and waves. Coleridge's poem made the albatross a symbol of guilt and warning for generations. Even today, sailors heed these old beliefs. In 2006, a Chilean crew refused to sail after their ship's albatross mascot died, fearing disaster. The mariner's curse still echoes on the sea. Stories shape our world, binding us to the mysteries and the lessons of nature. The tale endures, a living warning to all who journey into the unknown.